In this lesson, we'll create a metal nCloth material. Now we're doing this out of order. Again, we're just taking something here and we're kind of offlining it so that we can refine our attributes. Okay? And those attributes are going to be our nCloth metal material that we will propagate to many different surfaces in our final scene. So for testing purposes here, I have this scene somewhat set up where we're going to take our truck and just crash it into the wall. Now, the truck itself is not actually going to get any damage on it. The only object that we're going to test here is going to be the hood. Okay, and this is done for simplicity's sake so that we can run our simulations quickly and refine those attributes quickly. Okay, now I have already created a simple animation here, and I've done so based upon our previous lessons. I've created my roll bar, okay, and then I've added a uniform field to propel that roll cage into the wall. And you can see that I have a locator here that I have already attached and baked out to keyframes. Okay, so when we hit play, we'll just see that that crashes there. Now ultimately we're going to put the hood up there, okay, so that we get the hood making impact with that wall. Now the truck itself, okay, is just geometry right now, and it's just a child of that locator. But I'm going to go ahead and make it a rigid body so that our hood will interact with it. Okay, so we'll just make that a passive collider. And I'm going to drop that thickness all the way down to 0 so that it doesn't interfere with the hood at this point. And actually, let's just disable it so that we can get things moving here quickly. So let's go to the hood, and this is where we're going to do all of our experimentation. I'm going to select it and choose Create nCloth. Now that gives me my default nCloth material. And let's just bring up a hypergraph window here so that we can see what's going on. Okay, and there's our hood. And let's turn on hidden nodes as well so we can see. So I have the hood, and then I have this intermediate object that's ghosted out here, okay, and my output cloth shape node that we're actually seeing. Now it is an nCloth object right now, and if we hit play, okay, we'll see that it just kind of falls through there, and it's actually looks like it's actually getting hooked on something. Oh, it's actually getting hooked on our roll cage. So let's go in and let's bring up our outliner. Now I really don't need that roll cage turned on at all, so I'm going to shut that off. Now let's just hide our truck. So there's my roll cage, and we'll just hit play. Okay, and now we can see that now our hood just falls to the ground. The locator keeps moving. We don't need the roll bar, we'll just hide that. Okay, now the hood, again, we need to make this into a metal object. Okay, now I'm not going to mess with any of my materials just yet. I want to go in and take a look in our hypergraph, okay, at some of the things that are happening here. So when I hit play, we can see that the object falls there. Okay, but we have two nodes here. One is my deforming shape, and if I click on nMesh, I can also display its input mesh. Okay, and that is the mesh that I originally converted here over to nCloth. Now what's cool about this, and let's just switch back, I'm going to do display current mesh, is that that intermediate mesh is actually what the nCloth object will follow. So I'm going to take the hood, let's just make sure we're on frame 1, and I'm going to make it a child. This whole nCloth object will make it a child of the locator. Okay, and now let's hit play again. All right, we can see, hey, no difference there. Okay, it's still falling through space. However, if we look at the nCloth shape object itself, and we're going to scroll down here a little ways, we have these options here: input mesh attract and input motion drag. Now, the most important one in order for the hood to move with our locator is the motion drag. If we crank this up to 1, it will then follow its input mesh, this guy right here, the original surface. That's that intermediate object that we saw in the hypergraph. Now when I hit play, it goes right with it, okay, and we're getting the effects of air, okay, basically pushing against our surface, okay, as now it's deforming, okay, as it goes. Okay, I'm going to kill that, and that's actually our gravity that's causing a lot of that. So I'm going to turn off gravity. And this is going to be safe for me to do because this hood is never actually going to detach at this point. It's not going to fall through space. We don't need it to fall. In fact, there is an entire vehicle sitting underneath it, so that's going to block it anyways. All right, so now with that motion drag and the gravity off, let's just see where we're at. Okay, still getting lots of deformation in there that we don't want. That's okay. Okay, the other one we have here is the input mesh attract. This will cause my cloth object to be attracted to the shape of that intermediate surface, that input mesh. I'm going to keep this, well, actually, let's just crank that up to 1 for right now. Let's just take that damping all the way down and hit play again, and you'll see that, hey, now it's 100% solid, and it looks just like my input mesh. The problem, though, is that it basically is the input mesh and will return back to that shape. Okay, so it's kind of cool. It basically acts just like rigidity does, okay, but with a lot less computation. So we can kind of use that interchangeably. But the input mesh attract, we don't want that set to 1. We want deformations. We want this thing to break and to crumble. I'm going to set that to 0.1. Okay, this is going to help it just retain some of its shape. We don't want a whole lot of it in there, but we don't want it crumbling to nothing either. So we'll leave that there at 0.1. Okay, and then that will still enable some deformation to happen there. Okay, but you can see it's not collapsing like it was before. Okay, just a little bit as it picks up speed here, and you can see, you know, as we get further along, it loses its shape. Okay, and then completely crumbles when it hits the wall. All right, so let's go back and add some real metal to this now, just like we did with the roll cage. And also with our cube, so we're kind of mixing some of these attributes here. I'm going to crank all of these up to get a nice solid surface. And of course, we'll do our restitution at a value of 6. I do not want rigidity, and I do not want deform resistance. Okay, we can gloss over bounce, friction, and stickiness. We don't really need much of that happening here right now. Okay, and then we have the self collide with scale. Now, it's already up to a value of 3 there. I'm going to drop this to 1 just so that we can get a little bit more speed out of our simulation. Okay, but our self-collision flag, it's set to vertex. I'm going to change that to vertex face so that we get more accurate simulation. We could go to full surface. I often find, though, that full surface is an overkill, and usually I don't like the results as much as vertex face. Okay, but let's check that collision thickness. It's at 9 there, and let's see how that shapes up with the truck. I think that's overlapping just a bit. Well, we'll knock that down just slightly to 0.005. Okay, and we definitely want to add our mass. We're going to give it a mass of 20. Okay, and again, that mass is going to kind of bring things together. Now, it's not going to do much as far as the object at rest. It's really only going to have an impact when the object actually makes impact with something else. So that mass is going to be critical for collisions. Okay, and so now let's let it hit our wall. Okay, and we can see pushes up nicely. It really buckles. Okay, but a couple of things are happening here. Pushing out, it's heading into our vehicle. We really don't want that. Okay, and it's also bending down into the frame of the car itself. We don't want that either. Two things we can do to fix this. Let's take it back. Okay, and the first, I'm going to want to keep this stationary. So I'm going to select all of these vertices here. Okay, and I'm just going to throw a transform constraint onto them. Okay, so we'll go to N constraint transform. Okay, and I'll make that transform constraint a child of my original locator. Okay, and now that way, that is going to allow the locator itself to travel with the hood, with the vehicle. And that's going to keep it locked right here with the truck. Okay, all right, before we run this simulation, let's take a quick break here and we'll come back and wrap this up. Okay, so this is our first look here at defining our nCloth metal material.